As we have talked about before, it is important that we follow these 4 steps when we are solving tasks. And as this is an analysis video, we're going to look at the first 2 steps. And what I have done so far is that I have read the text and I have tried to understand what it says. And I'm going to mark a few things here. There is a lot of information here for the context. Our friend has asked us to do something and so on. But what does it actually tell us to do? The script shall ask him, the script shall ask him to measure things 5 times. And then the script shall calculate the average of the measurements and display it on the screen. So these are the 3 things that I have found in this script that we need to do. We shall ask the user to take 5 measurements. We shall calculate the average of those measurements, and then we shall display the average on the screen. And we also get some information about that our friend, the carpenter, wants the script to look like this when it's run. So we have this information, and now it's time to see if we have understood it, and I think we have. And if we can think of a picture or diagram, yes, we have this information of how it will look when it's finished. And I also think that there is enough information here because we have figured out what we need to do and we know how it should look like. So it's time to devise our plan. And I will do that by creating a flowchart. And as usual, I start with adding the start and the end. And then we take a look at what do we need to do. We should ask him to make the measurements 5 times. But this can, now that we think about it, it can really be divided into 2 steps, can't it? It can provide the instructions, and then there is actually reading the 5 values or the 5 measurements. So I think when I'm now thinking about it a second time, I think I will divide it into 2 steps. And the first step is to display the instructions. And then now the second part is to actually read them. So I will create the loop to read the values, and then we can see and talk about it. Okay, so here we have our loop, and we say that, all right, just to recap what we did, we display the instructions, and after having displayed the instructions, we want to read the 5 values. We created a loop here. We start at 0, and as long as I is less than 5, we input a measurement, and then we do this 5 times. But there is one thing that's missing here, because we need to calculate the average. And how should we do that if we just input the measurements? There is something missing here that we, just from following the text here, couldn't see, that we must think about so that we don't miss it. And what can it be? Well, we have to, of course, add all the measurements together. So I will modify this a little bit, and then we can see how it looks. So if we take a look now, we see that, all right, let's go back and see what happens from the beginning. We display the instructions, that's this line here. And we set 2 variables to be 0. the one that we had before for the loop, we must start at 0 so that we can know how many times we will iterate in the loop. But there is this new variable that I added here, total, which will keep track of how the total of the measurements will be in this variable. And then we go on to the loop and say that, all right, loop 5 times. What do we do each time? We input a new measurement, we add that new measurement to the running total, and we increase I just to know how many times we should be in here. So 5 times we do this. And then there is one more bit to do, and that is to calculate the average and to display it. And as you can see, I added the last part here, but I also finished up the other parts and made them look a little bit nicer. So I added true and false and this bit, of course, here. So we can see that, all right, we start, give the instructions. We set these two variables to 0. And 5 times we do read a new measurement, add the measurement to the total, and then we go back and do the same again 5 times, as we said. Then we calculate the average using the total, and then we display the average, and then we are finished. And now we can go back and compare this to what we have here and see that, all right, we have managed to cover all of this. And something to take with us here is that sometimes you start working on your plan, but realize that there is something that you need to change. For example, in this case, we needed to change this and add total here. And you shouldn't be afraid to do that, to change your mind and see that, all right, I must change my plan for it to work.